I know a great many people out there. They say to me, so what's up with our lieutenant governor? We don't hear much about her. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm being a little facetious. It's 8:34. It is 54. She was on Fox News Channel. I watched her on Tucker Carlson last week. I was just telling her online or on the phone a couple of minutes ago that there's a story in a British newspaper today about her. Well, she's referenced several times in the story. It's a much bigger, wider encompassing story about the direction of Idaho politics. We're at 53. It's 8:34 on 96.1 FM and News Radio 1310 KLIX with Bill Colley and Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin with us until just about 9 o'clock this morning. Welcome back to our program.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Bill. It's been a while. I've missed being on your show and talking to you and listening to the concerns of your local constituents.
Well, speaking of constituents, I imagine you're getting a lot of feedback lately. You certainly. Somebody called it a stunt a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, yeah, well, it's a stunt that certainly raised your name recognition. If nothing else, it doesn't sound like you're backing down in any way.
Well, someone did call it a stunt. What I call it is just when our governor left the state for a day, he presented me with an opportunity to correct a deficiency which our governor has had more than a year to correct, and he still refuses to do anything about some of these mandates that are being placed on local people. Especially what's problematic is what they're doing to our kids. You know, it's so hypocritical to be going around yourself to political events and you're not wearing a mask with the hundreds and hundreds of people, but yet forcing our little kids to wear these masks, and they're being subjected to discrimination and harassment, bullying in the classroom. If our governor would listen to some of the other voices and concerns of the parents and teachers and kids, then he would understand that this is it's cruel and unusual punishment to be exacting this on our kids, the least risk population and the most impressionable population here in Idaho.
Well, you're facing two things in this primary. You're facing obviously a sitting governor, and there'll be some other candidates. I think though that right now, that you're the two biggest names, and I know Ed has some money to spend too. But in this situation, you're not only going to be facing off against other candidates. My impression is you're going to be facing your other opponent is called mainstream media. And I would imagine that you've got to develop a strategy that will take that into account as well.
Well, the mainstream media has been attacking me ever since day one. And so I guess it's been good training in the past 2.5 years. And we have developed our own strategy, and that is to reach out to some of the smaller outlets. That's why I really appreciate local radio like yours, Bill. These are closest to the people where we can have an opportunity to speak the truth. And then we try to be as proactive as we can and get messaging out there to circumvent what we know are the attacks that are going to be coming our way. So it's been a training this last couple years. What I think is happening is that anytime that we as conservatives who are fighting to protect our basic constitutional rights of individual liberty, protect our state sovereignty, and work to protect our traditional conservative values here in Idaho. When we do that, we say things that a lot of people just don't want to hear, and so because they don't want to hear what we have to say, their tactic is to just turn and attack and call us whatever they want to call us. But whatever they want to do, it's not going to cause me to be. Oh, wow, that was not a gunshot there.
Good thing. Yeah.
a glass just fell into the sink as I was talking. Maybe God's trying to tell me something. No, I think that as long as we continue to speak the truth, that's what I'm committed to doing. And as I considered, what do I do next? Do I run for re-election as lieutenant governor, or do I run for governor? It never was my intent when I decided to run for lieutenant governor to one day run for governor, but I if I'm going to be subjected to the same kind of attack by the media, by the left, even by some in my own party, then I might as well make an effort to run for the governor, because in that capacity, I feel that, especially in light of some of the violations and actions that have taken place this past year, that I can try to make more of a difference in that position.
I got to get to a quick break, but we've got more coming up. Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin joining us this morning on 96.1 FM and News Radio 1310 KLIX. It's 8:40. We're at 53. Bill Colley as well on Magic Valley this morning. I'm here until 10 o'clock. So we are 11 months away from a primary day in Idaho, and the biggest one is going to be obviously for governor. And Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin joining us this morning. She's one of the challengers looking to move up into that top executive job in the state. We're at 8:43, and you're listening to 96.1 FM and News Radio 1310 KLIX with Bill Colley on Magic Valley this morning. Temperature bouncing around a little bit right now, but we're at 55. And by the way, we should point out when people refer to you, the proper term, it's like when you talk about Attorney General, he's referred to as General. When addressing the Lieutenant Governor, you already say Governor. You don't put the Lieutenant in there. I think a lot of people probably aren't aware of that. And so if I call her Governor and you think that's an endorsement at the moment, it's actually the proper term. We were talking off air, and you've been involved with this panel that is looking into critical race theory. And I tried to explain this to a friend a couple of days ago, that yes, the legislature moved on this. It's now, we had the governor signed it after the legislature quite quickly moved the bill. But your concern is that it could still pop up or crop up in schools under a different name, like a euphemism of some sorts. And so it isn't necessarily, it hasn't gone away, has it?
No, absolutely not. And in fact, the Biden administration has already put out a proposed rule to implement this in our primary and secondary schools, however they choose to define it. And this is what's been really interesting, Bill. I decided to form a task force to examine this and see whether or to what extent it's happening in our educational systems. And some people still today don't even acknowledge that we have this here. Our governor was interviewed the other day when asked about critical race theory, denying that it's happening in our schools. But I have to ask the question, what is critical race theory? And this is something I would challenge every Idahoan to study what this is and try to put a definition as to what it is, because that's one of the ways that the liberal left likes to operate. They like to put these nebulous terms out there that we can't really define. And as long as we can't define it and know what it is that they're talking about, then we can't really deal with it. It's just like with assault weapons. When they use terms like assault weapon ban, we would like to know, what do you think is assault weapon? Is it a knife? Is it a handgun? Tell us what it is so that we know how to deal with it. And the left doesn't like to do that. And so I decided to form this committee to examine this and examine, first of all, try to determine what it is, because now it is in our statute, but it's in our statute and it's not defined. And that's problematic when you have a statute that refers to critical race theory, but it doesn't set out and seek to define what that is. And so that's one of the very first things that we've been trying to do, is get a grasp of exactly what is it. And I find it so interesting that people are coming up and attacking our effort when nobody's even really come out with a definition of what it is yet. So that's what we're trying to do in our first meeting. We're going to have another 2 or 3 more meetings. We have one in June where we're going to examine what is happening in some of our elementary, primary schools and primary and secondary schools, K-12 public schools. It's interesting. Over the weekend, I had a teacher from one of the Boise high school who sent me a bunch of emails from students, and I was reading through these students' emails, and I couldn't help but think that, well, because one of the emails was talking about, why am I not learning about Christopher Columbus, what a violent person he was and a rapist? And I'm thinking, well, that's an interesting thought, because first of all, Christopher Columbus, he was famous for discovering the Americas, meaning Central America, South America, North America, even the islands. And in fact, the islands that he landed on were what we know today as being Haiti and Dominican Republic. And that was back in the 1400s. That has nothing to do with the country of America that and our form of government, the United States of America, that we have, that our founding fathers have put together. But yet, if these students already have a biased view of who this person is, and he may well have been a vicious person, but that was in the 1400s, and there was a whole different world back then. But I just say that because I have to wonder that these kids in high school, they're learning this from somewhere, and we're just trying to understand where this is coming from. And so that's what we're trying to do. I did read an article over the weekend where the president or the chair of the House Education Committee, there was a bill, House Bill 377, which passed through the legislature and was signed, and that's the one I'm referring to, where it says we reference critical race theory, but we don't define it. And I do appreciate the fact every single Republican did vote for that. But the chair of the Education Committee, and I do hope, with all due respect, that Representative Clow is listening this morning to your show, because he criticized the fact that being the chair of the Education Committee, I didn't select him to serve on my task force. But I would just say, well, to him, you were the chair of that committee for five months almost. We went into the longest legislative session in history. You were the chair of that committee, and this was the subject of contentious debate in the legislature. So why didn't, with all due respect, Representative Clow, why didn't you pick up on this and study this in your committee? We can't turn our back on these things, but people are maybe afraid to confront things that might be controversial and problematic. But we have to be proactive to see what's coming down towards our state and do something about it to stand against this and protect our kids, rather than being reactive. And back to the Biden rule, a reactive position would be to bury our heads in the sand, pretend this isn't real, and then all of a sudden have it be upon us, and then we're trying to battle it. And so that's what, as a business person, that's how I operate, and that's what I try to do, is bring more of a proactive stance, and not be afraid to talk about these things, even if they may be difficult and controversial. We need to address this. We need to understand what it is, and we need to do what needs to be done to protect our kids and to protect our teachers, because in some states, teachers are actually losing their jobs if they fail to teach certain concepts in the schools. So that's what the effort is all about.
Wanted to mention we've got a conversation with Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin this morning on 96.1 FM and News Radio 1310 KLIX. We're at 56. Bill Colley as well. We're at 8:51. We'll be talking again, obviously, over the next 40-some weeks about all of this. At the moment, you've got a number of people. Some of them file every race, and then they really don't campaign, so that they get a name on the ballot. And but at the moment, there are at least three of you who can obviously finance campaigns, I think, well. The governor, Ed, and yourself. I was a little surprised when Mr. Bundy said that he would be a candidate. At some point, I don't know how crowded this is going to get, but do you think a crowded field is a benefit to you because you won in a five-way race back in 2018. Is it a benefit to you, or would it be better if it was just one-on-one, you and Brad Little?
Well, people take different views on that. There are some people that think it a head-to-head, with the governor and myself would be better for the conservative movement. When you take a look at the last gubernatorial race where there were three candidates and pretty closely divided, a third, a third, a third. If one candidate perhaps would have worked a little bit harder and done a little bit more, could have made up that 3 or 4% to get over the finish line. So there's that view as well. And then, yes, when I was running for lieutenant governor, there were 5 in the race. And so I can't be too focused on which is the best scenario, but rather focus on my message, getting the right message out there to the people, because that's what will be successful, is the right message. It's not necessarily who has the most money. It's who has the best message and who it gets out there and is willing to work the hardest. And when I ran for lieutenant governor, that was one of the most difficult things that I did in my life. I worked so hard and I was exhausted. There were times when I was laying, flat out on the ground and just praying for strength to go to the next meeting. It is tiring, and I know that this is going to be even more so. But I cannot just not do this and not make an effort to make a difference and take one more stand to work to protect our state and our kids, our citizens, because the direction that I see our state going is in the wrong direction. We're turning more towards a socialistic, leftist form of government. We're continuing to accept more and more federal dollars, which sacrifice and give away our state sovereignty, and that's where we have to do. When we accept those dollars, we have to do it the federal government way, not the Idaho way. And one of the things I've talked about with the governor keeping us in this emergency COVID declaration, this agreement that's signed by our governor gives away a condition of accepting money, gives full access to Idaho's lands. It holds the federal government harmless for liability, and it makes the state be the enforcer of some sometimes very problematic federal laws. And I can't abide by that. I have gone around traveling and ripping that up as an example, because that is what I'm talking about, where we're going down the wrong path. We continue to just acquiesce to the federal government, and it's time for us to take a strong stand. The governors of all the respective states will be the last line of defense for the freedoms and the liberties of the individuals and the citizens. And that's why I'm choosing to run for governor. And I believe I've proven over the last couple of years that I am strong and willing to take positions against some of that. And I have what I know to be the strongest position to stand against that pervasive and perverse reach of the federal government into our state.
Got a couple of minutes to go. For people who'd like to know more about your campaign, social media contacts, how do they find you online?
Yeah, please, people, if you would listen to or go to my website, janiceforidaho.com. It's Janice, F-O-R, Idaho.com. I also do have a Facebook page and a Twitter handle, which we're working to build that up. So please reach out. I'd love to hear from you and listen to what your concerns are. And we're right now building on a real strong statewide committee to represent every single county throughout the state, and we're working on putting together events that I'd like to go around the state and conduct rallies similar to what our President Trump did. And as the person who stood with Trump since day one, I was the first vice chair for the Trump Idaho team.
Yeah, I remember that.
Trump delegate, I successfully filed an amicus brief in support of Trump when our governor and our AG failed to do so. I like the idea of doing some rallies around the state and just bringing people together and listening to what the concerns are. So I'm really anxious and excited to be on the campaign trail again. And I know it's we're just going to have a lot of fun with this in the next year. It's going to be a lot of work, but we're going to have a lot of fun as well.
The reason I remember all of that is because back in early part of 2016, somebody by the name of Janice McGeachin said to me, "How come you're not on board with Donald Trump?" Wasn't long afterward that I was.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you so much for your time this morning. We'll do this. So we'll have to pick a day where we can actually take a little bit longer and maybe do some telephone calls or the like too as well.
Yeah, I'd love that because I really do love listening to the concerns of the people in the area. So thank you so much, Bill, for the opportunity. God bless you. Have a great day.
You too. We'll talk soon. Thank you again. Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin joining us this morning. A candidate now for governor, of course. Coming up on 8:59, we're at 55. One more hour of Magic Valley this morning, still ahead, with Bill Colley on 96.1 FM, News Radio 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com.